Okay, now it's time to reconvene from the Board of Education new member onboarding, and we move to item number 4 on the agenda of request to address the board. Each person addressing the board will be allowed 3 minutes. The Board of Education has the prerogative to limit speaking to 3 minutes when there are 3 or more patrons to allow speakers an opportunity to address the board in a timely manner. We allocate up to 30 minutes for addressing the board at each regular board meeting. Please face the board, not the audience, when you speak. We want to hear what is being said, so we ask the audience to refrain from making comments or sounds that make it hard to hear the speaker. No signs are allowed in the boardroom. We will not engage in dialogue with patrons presenting the board. The purpose of the request to address the board is to listen to patrons. The board president and superintendent will identify staff to follow up on information requested from patrons when necessary. At regular business meetings, any school district-related matter can be presented to the board, but only agenda items can be acted upon during a given meeting. At special meetings, comments will be limited to the subject of action items of the meeting's agenda. Speakers will not be permitted to make defamatory comments or to use abusive or vulgar language. Expressions of personal complaints about staff or students are discouraged at public meetings. Concerns about individuals should be brought to the attention of the appropriate administrative authority. Specific building or program concerns should be brought to the attention of the building principal or program supervisor. Up first to speak, addressing the board, I'm sorry I'm having a tough time reading the last name, Jeremy.
Me, it's Fanta.
Okay.
Fat man in the red suit.
Okay, Jeremy Fanta. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. I tend to ramble a bunch, so I wrote some notes, and I'll try to stick to the point. I'm going to preface by my daughter is currently a 5th grader at Seedling Mile. Prior to all this talk coming up, I've already made the decision to try to opt my daughter into Grand Island Northwest Public Schools. The reason I'm opting her out of GIPS and into Grand Island Northwest is for a performance issue. When you look at schools' progress, it's no comparison when you look at GIPS and Grand Island Northwest. I think a lot of this has to do with student populations and overcrowding. So to talk about this issue specifically at hand, the emails that we got, it's a cost issue where they talked about difficulty in finding teachers. Before I came up here today, I looked at the Nebraska Department of Education website, and I looked at all kinds of schools within the Grand Island Public School District, the surrounding area, Hastings, Kearney, Grand Island Northwest, Lexington, Schuyler, Lincoln, Omaha, Columbus, Norfolk, Hastings, and Adams Central. And what I found is that this teacher-to-student ratio is pretty small. I'm guessing there's probably some state statute that says how many teachers per student you can have. So it appears that Grand Island Public Schools is meeting our staffing requirements. So when the cost becomes an issue, I don't see it as a teacher issue, but where else are these costs coming from? When I look at them in Grand Island Public Schools as a whole, what are we doing different than these other schools? And I immediately look at the academies. When I look at the academies, I look at buildings, janitors to maintain buildings, ground staff to maintain grounds, teachers and all the other resources to staff these academies. And I immediately think, okay, I wasn't here when they made the decision to create academies. I served 13 years in the military. I came back and, hey, Grand Island has academies. Here we go. So my immediate question that comes to mind is, what are the pros and cons of these academies and all these buildings and all these additional staff? Are they supposed to increase the success of every student every day? When you look at the rates and I look at these scores in English, math, science from Grand Island that's probably my time, I'm sure.
I'll give you 15 seconds to wrap up.
Okay. Grand Island Public Schools is not meeting up to snuff to anybody. So my recommendation is, please don't close Seedling Mile. You're looking at a micro solution for a macro issue. I think there's other money to be saved across the board. And then finally, if you do elect to close it, please look at redistricting. I'm outside of Grand Island city limits. I should have the option to go to Grand Island Northwest, which was supposed to be a rural school anyway when it was districted that way how many ever odd years ago. Thank you.
Okay, the second speaker we have is Mr. Larry Abraham. Mr. Abraham?
I'll leave my turn to the last and decide from there.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to speaker number 3, Amy Penny.
Good evening. My name is Amy Penny, and I'm currently the second grade teacher at Seedling Mile Elementary. I would like to share some thoughts about what I heard on last time's board meeting and also my personal perspective. I would like to start with the discussion around our PLCs as highlighted both by Mr. Fisher and Ms. Carter. Do our PLCs fit the mold that GIPS would like them to fit? The simple answer is no. But I think most of us would say they're better. I've been with first and third grade, and from that experience, I can tell you what overlaps, what needs more emphasis, and how to best prepare my students for the following year. Do I have a partner within the building? No. But I have had pivotal conversations with all of my team members. As for the information shared, I understand logistics, but I can't help but wonder about the numbers. We know many families transfer their students out of GIPS into smaller schools at Northwest. If you take away our transfers, Seedling Mile does not look good. We know a lot of our families transfer into Seedling Mile. We're a hidden gem, so make us known. Make us the 1R. Make us the St. Labori for the district. Advertise our small school and community feel. Because if you take away the transfers from Northwest, what would their actual numbers look like? There was also the talk about specialists being shared, that Seedling Mile was taking from Dodge and other schools. My question for you, do other schools within the district not share specialists? When I looked at the directory, I saw Stolly and Star, Jefferson and Kinnickrem, Newell and Lincoln. Is it not fair to note that we're not the only building that has to share? I know that we may seem inefficient to GIPS, but to us, we are efficient, from our PLCs and teamwork to our community. Our students and families do not see our inefficiencies. They see what we can do for their children in a one-unit school. It is hard for me to express how I truly feel. I care about the school, about these families. I worry for the students that would be transitioning and the families trying to fit into a new community. I worry about us teachers finding the best fit for ourselves. Personally, I've toured 2 of the bigger schools within the district. It's not for me. I've been at and only know small schools. The idea of being on a PLC team that may not consider my experience is disheartening, not to mention questioning if I would be a good fit for the building and the administration team. I know this is a big decision and it weighs heavy on your hearts and minds. But I don't think you will know the true full weight that some of us already feel. You will go to sleep tonight, decision done. The rest of us will be planning our future, anxious, nervous, and full of worry. I know it's a one-unit school, but it will affect many. Some you may not even know right away. So I ask you, please, consider keeping us open. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, speaker number 4, Jane Richardson.
Hello, I'm Jane Richardson, and I emailed each one of you, and many of you emailed me back. Thank you for that. I'm going to basically highlight my email, so for those of you that read it, it's going to be a little bit redundant, but I'd like it to be in the record. I'm the County Commissioner for District 5, which is the district of Sealing Mile. I've received numerous calls and emails and questions concerning the closing of the school. Words I've heard over and over: devastating, heartbroken, crushed. I realize sometimes it's difficult to manage budgetary issues along with concern for your constituents. However, Mr. Fisher stated at his last presentation on Thursday that you do have the money to run Sealing Mile. So I urge you to please listen to your constituents. Sealing Mile's been in existence since 1888 and became annexed in the city in the 1970s. It's remodeled in 1992 and is in tremendous shape. It's a lovely small one-unit school. Students' test scores are usually one of the highest in the district. Teachers usually stay there for 25 to 30 years because they enjoy it so much. Sealing Mile families love their school. They've stated there's only 82 students there currently, which averages to approximately 16 to 17 students per class, which I feel is optimal. No one feels comfortable going to a crowded school, especially one with 3 to 4 units when you're used to one. If budgetary issues are such a concern, might I suggest selling the principal building? I've toured it and would guess it's approximately 15% occupied. Wouldn't it be easier to simply relocate those that are currently using the principal building rather than uprooting 82 families? Maybe you could get your $3 million back or even more. Makes a lot more sense to me than closing Sealing Mile School, where people lose their neighborhood school, as well as houses around there will definitely lose value. Parents want smaller schools. Case in point, the recent Central Catholic School. Sealing Mile and Central Catholic Elementary have many, many similarities. Private citizens raised approximately $10 million to have that school built, yet GIPS suggests we close our similar school and simply keep an empty building. I do not understand this. Then we transfer students to a larger school, far away from their homes that are already crowded. How does this make sense? It just doesn't to me. For all of the above stated reasons, please vote no in closing our school. Sealing Mile Elementary is a gem, as has been previously stated, and we would love a sensible decision, and your constituents deserve your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, speaker number 5, Jim Jeffries.
Good evening. I live at 40 Keister Lake. I've lived there all my life. Sealing Mile has been my neighborhood school when I grew up. It was my kids' neighborhood school as they grew up. I'm a retired teacher of 32 years, and I know the importance of how small classes outweigh larger classes. I'm in support of keeping the school open. I feel like this area of town needs a neighborhood school. It's one of those things that people bond together with. You go to parent-teacher meetings, you go to all kinds of different activities, and it's something that even if the class size are small, I think that's an advantage. It's something that kids will remember for the rest of their life. So please think about this when you vote. I'm in favor of keeping the school open. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 6, Bill Jeffries.
Good evening. I'm Jim's brother, obviously, but so we all went to school there. In fact, when I went to school there were 8 teachers, 8 classes. And there was no Hidden Lakes, there was no Eagles Lake, there was no Davis Lake. So I'm really shocked at the numbers. I mean, I think they'd be much higher, but who's in charge of that? Whose district is that? Who represents that area? Who comes out of that? Which board member? Have you talked to your constituents? You both are? 3 people represent that area? Have you talked to your constituents? Have you had a town hall at the school, or has anybody went door to door? Have you gone door to door? Yes? This seems like kind of a too fast. I don't know how long you've studied this. To me, I don't know. It seems like a knee-jerk deal. My father was on this board a long time ago, but he would tell me that it really comes down to common sense. Dollars do matter, but common sense is really the right way to go. But I'd hate to see a knee-jerk reaction affect so many people. So, I mean, if we could study this longer, curves change, people move in, people move out, but it just seems like a bad shell game that you're playing. So please keep the school open is my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larry Abraham, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I think these people pretty well spoke their piece, and they spoke well. And if that doesn't convince anybody, there's nothing gonna convince them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to subject number 5.1, operation of Ceiling Mile Elementaries for 2025-26 school year. Mr. Matt Fisher.
Okay, obviously we had this as an information item last week, and so I just wanted to review a few of the pieces that we talked about last week. First of all, the thoughts around Ceiling Mile that our audience has shared, and I know a number of board members received multiple emails about in terms of those positives of the Ceiling Mile School. I think we would all certainly agree there are a lot of great things about the Ceiling Mile School. Obviously, it's got a long history, one of the oldest schools in Hall County, and over that time has certainly been a highly successful school. We talked about the 2014 National Blue Ribbon recognition that the school received. We talked about the building and the quality of the building that is there, and certainly there's no issues that exist around that building that cannot continue to be addressed. And then we talked about the great staff that we have in place and the many staff members that have been a part of that school over the years. And so definitely nothing that we are talking about or recommending in terms of considering not operating Ceiling Mile next year has anything to do with a negative part about that building and the staff that's there. But I think there are some real challenges that I think we're forced to consider. And I think certainly the first part of that is the efficiency. And we talked about financial efficiency as far as the almost $2,700 when Ceiling Mile was operating with kindergarten in place. Their per pupil cost was almost $2,700 greater than what the cost was in other buildings across the district. And then we also looked at the number growing this year as far as our projected costs, now that we did not have any kindergartners attending at Ceiling Mile. That cost moving up over 22,000 per student. Again, you know, probably in that $6,500 to $7,000 more per student operational cost. And then again, looking ahead, that if we did not put any kindergarten or first grade class in the Seedling Mile building for next year, that cost would rise to over 28,000 per student. So certainly from an efficiency standpoint, from finances, that has to be a concern. I think part of the board's responsibility is to operate as efficiently as possible with a thought around how the cost of the operation of the district impacts our taxpayers. I think that's obviously part of what the board is charged with. I think the other concern really in terms of efficiency is the staffing piece. The fact that we're in a national, state, and certainly local teacher shortage. And one of the biggest areas that we've struggled to fully staff the last couple of years has been elementary educators. And so I think when we look at how can we be as efficient as possible with the staff members that we have, again, I think that makes us take a hard look at the operation of Seedling Mile. We have basically 9 full-time teaching equivalencies obligated to the operation of Seedling Mile, 5 regular staff classroom teachers, and then the specialists that we bring in account for another 4 FTEs. I think if we think about that and the 82 students that we currently have in that building, that's 1 teacher for every 9.1 students. And if we look at our next smallest building, which is Connect Room, which is a 2-section building, there we're actually have 1 teacher for about 13.8, so just shy of 14 students that we're able to serve with 1 teacher in that next largest building. And as you go to larger buildings yet, that efficient use of staff gets greater and greater. Obviously everyone would like to have, the small class sizes. There aren't enough teachers out there, and there's not enough dollars to pay for the type of small class sizes that we have at Seedling Mile. We did talk about being unable to provide the same level of supports and the fact that our specialist schedules, because of the way we have to bring in specialists for a 1-section building, really drive the schedule. It's not student needs that drive our scheduling at Seedling Mile. It's really the specialists that drive that need. So again, I think in terms of being able to deliver the type of education we want for students, there's definitely some things that we're missing out on there. And then the other part of the challenge side that we talked about is just where Grand Island is currently growing. Housing developments that are currently taking place at Prairie Commons. Certainly that's an area that's growing. We've been having conversations for the past couple years about a need to potentially secure property in that area for a future elementary building. We've had conversations with the city. They're projecting, upwards of 2,000 housing units in the Good Life District north of Highway 2. And so obviously a 2,000 unit housing development is going to force us to consider at least 1 elementary in that area. So again, just thinking about where the growth is, and unfortunately, there's no real growth taking place in the Seedling Mile area. So, ultimately that brings us to the recommendation that our district leadership team has brought to the board, and we shared with you an information last week, and that recommendation is simply that we consider not operating the Seedling Mile building for the 25-26 school year. and that we join that attendance area with Dodge Elementary, where we have adequate space to accommodate all those students. We made the recommendation that the board act as quickly as possible on this, because we feel like it's important for the staff to have the best opportunity to secure other positions as those come available across this district or outside the district, if that would be a choice that they would make. We think it's unfair to staff to hold off on making the decision. And we know that it was a negative impact that we had last year when we had to make the decision to not operate the kindergarten there late because we didn't have the staff that we needed to staff other parts of the district. So again, that's part of the recommendation, was to act quickly. We know that there's going to be a need for a special transfer timeline to be put in place in order to allow the students and families from Seedling Mile to have an opportunity to explore and make a decision about where the best school location would be for them across the district. And then finally, I think there's definitely a need for us to consider transportation. And exactly what that would look like probably is going to be driven by where ultimately the students would decide to attend. So with that in mind, basically the recommendation deals with not operating and joining the attendance area with Dodge. Those would be the two board actions. After that, the other things that would be basically administrative processes that we would put in place once we knew where we were going in terms of moving forward. So with that, I would, I guess, share one other thought that came out of the meeting that we had with Seedling Mile families prior to Thanksgiving. And that was, the question was, if the board decided to not go ahead and operate Seedling Mile next year, will closing it be a consideration for the year after or the year after that? And I think you have to say yes, it would be a consideration because this staffing shortage is not going away. Currently, the state's looking at a $432 million shortfall in their budget. We're heavily dependent on dollars from the state. So while we could financially support having that building open right now, we don't know that we're going to be able to financially support that in the future. So I think this is one of those things that, you know, we're dealing with this now, and the recommendation coming from the district administration is that we consider closing it. I think the reality is if we decide not to do that at this point in time, it's probably something that the board is going to have to continue to deal with. With that, I'd answer any questions that the board would have.
Ms. Albers?
Just to reiterate a couple things, so any teachers that are at Seedling Mile will be given a first choice or certainly a fair choice of where they want to transfer, and students will also be given an early option to be able to transfer into another school as they see fit or what might fit their needs for their family.
Yes. The staff, certainly as we start having openings in buildings, again, that's part of why I think the sooner this is acted on, the better for our staff. Then they would be given the opportunity as those positions opened to make a move into those positions. And the reality is if, you know, we have an opening in one building and somebody from another building wanted to move to that building and we had a Seedling Mile person that wanted to move to that building, we're going to give priority to the Seedling Mile staff member that was displaced. You know, I think that's just the way we have to address that in the most fair manner possible. As far as the students, we've already determined that if the board decides to go ahead and not operate next year, that as soon as we get back from the Christmas break, we will open up an opportunity for Seedling Mile families to start doing a special transfer, and that's going to be about a month. I think actually it's a little over a month before we open up the regular registration window, and then even when the regular registration window opens, we don't start considering transfers until later than that. So we're definitely going to create an early transfer opportunity for those students who would be coming out of Seedling Mile.
And so the students that transfer, do you think it would be possible to give them like an orientation for the district to help facilitate that so that the parents and the child will be welcomed into the new schools, that
Yeah,
they can see? Because that's going to be scary for any child.
I think, first of all, we would encourage, families to visit the buildings that they thought they might be interested in. And we know that every family is going to look at things a little bit differently depending on where their work setting is, maybe where they know people. So we would, encourage them to arrange a time to meet and visit the building that they might be interested in. And then once we get through that initial transfer process, then we would definitely be looking at, what is the best way to orientate the students that would be coming from the Seedling Mile into whatever building they're happening to choose. So yeah, I think we obviously want to be as considerate of the students and the family and the staff as we can be. This is a hard situation. There's no doubt about it. And we definitely want to be as obliging as possible if that decision gets made to those people that have been displaced by the decision.
And transportation.
Transportation, again, obviously thinking about it just in the most black and white terms.
My bases.
If all of the students or the majority of the students from Seedling Mile would go to Dodge, then running a bus, 2 buses, whatever it takes from Seedling Mile to Dodge at the beginning of the day, and then back from Dodge to Seedling Mile at the end of the day would probably be, the most straightforward, logical thought process. But we don't know how many students would go where. So I think I think transportation is something that we're definitely going to have to consider and figure out, where does it make sense for us to provide that transportation.
Are there any schools that wouldn't take any transfers? Any elementary schools that are too full to take any transfers?
That's always a little bit, of a question until you get into the registration process. Do we have a few classes across the district? I wouldn't say there's no buildings, but there might be third grade at a particular class or a particular building might be running at capacity right now. We don't have any buildings that are completely full. So it really would come down to what grade level would a student need to be in a particular building as far as whether there would be any room or not.
And just one more thing, I've been on the board 8 years, and we've discussed Seedling Mile before. I think the reason that it's happening, we've never discussed it with a lot of seriousness at any other point, but because there's no kindergarten class now, and there's 82 kids in the building, and we're in a shortfall for teachers, and the state's in a shortfall for the budget, that's why we're really considering this so seriously now. But thank you so much for your time.
Do you have any further questions for Mr. Fisher? Mr. Hawley?
Mr. Fisher, if Seedling Mile were to not operate this year and we combine that area with Dodge, in the future, would there be any looking at area mapping the schools? I know that on the south side, I'm looking at the area map now. For example, Shoemakers is a pretty big area like this would be going out into the rural south part of town. Same with Gates. Is there any thought around remapping that, or would it just remain as one area going forward?
Well, I think certainly taking a look at remapping would be something that probably is gonna make some sense at some, whether it's next year or the year after. Obviously, as population continues to grow in Grand Island, there's gonna be some need to look at the way that we've set those attendance areas. So yeah, I think certainly in the future that now, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, you know, I think it's something we would have to look at every year is, are we at a point where we need to do something, or did we do this and it totally didn't work and we need to redraw some lines right now?
And another question. So you had mentioned, obviously bringing in the specialists, right? We know that schools do share specialists. That's no secret. That's normal. I remember sitting in our town hall a couple weeks back before Thanksgiving and listening to some of the parents that were there. There's some vast differences, it sounds like, in what our specialists can do at Sealing Mile versus what we can do at other schools. For example, one parent said that their kid was in 4th grade but learning kindergarten art. And we also have, if I'm not mistaken, our special needs students are being taught virtually. I mean, there's some vast differences in what our specialists can offer at that location. Is there anything else you can provide on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are good examples of the challenges, you know, and again, I think our specialists do the best that they can do, but, you know, when you have that single section setting and you're only gonna be there for a limited amount of time because you have, you know, assignments in other buildings, it certainly limits what you're doing. And the special education situation is, I think, a concern that, you know, we don't have a special ed teacher that we can free up for the limited amount of time that those students there need. So we have been doing it virtually in terms of serving that, and I think we would probably all agree that doing it virtually is probably not equivalent to doing it with a live person.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia Mendez?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all the families and community members that are here. It takes a lot of guts, courage to come up and speak with us and email us and everything. And just like to encourage everyone to, I love seeing all those seats filled, to be honest, because it shows that you're engaged with us and with your community. But I just want to show appreciation for your passion and how much you love your school. I know I've talked with people here on this board, and it's a pretty tough decision, especially when there's a lot of emotions, right? A lot of data that's taken into it. I would just like to just let the school district know that I want transportation to be a huge priority in kind of like how this decision goes about, right? If we do approve the closing of the school, because I know that there's a huge population there that's free and reduced lunch, and just knowing that transportation is a huge issue for our community, not only in that area, right, but of all of Grand Island. So just making sure that that's at the forefront. And then just also knowing that if this decision does move forward, there's going to be a lot of hurt, right, in the community, and just knowing that the students and the teachers' mental health and well-being is also being considered, right? If we can increase some type of supports for students, if it's needed, you know, just making sure that if this decision does get approved tonight, that we have some of those ducks in a row as we move forward. But, you know, I was just wanted to let you all know that statement, and just, yeah.
Any further questions? Oh, Mr. Sykes.
So I think, like, as a parent, I always took for granted that when my kid showed up, there'd be a teacher in the classroom. And you mentioned talking about teacher shortage, not just like some people might assume that it's just a GIPS problem. Could you speak a little bit to what you're seeing? You have a unique vantage point, like statewide. Like, I know I'm on the personnel committee and I get to see some of that stuff, but as a superintendent, as you talk to other districts, what you're seeing, not just as available teachers, but what's coming up when you talk about we don't see an end to the shortage combined with, because that helps me with some clarity, and it might help others too.
So, just some statistics. 5 years ago, every year for the last 10 years or so, the state has done a survey of schools about what teaching positions they were unable to fill. And it used to be there were hard to fill teaching positions, you know, music, math, science, foreign language. Those were hard positions to fill, and so there were shortages in some areas. And so 5 years ago, there were 76 unfilled positions in the state based on what different districts needed and what they reported that they were not able to hire. Last year was 980 some. So just shy of 1,000 teachers that across the state we were short. So that's where we're at now. Then the other part of that equation is that projection based on the number of students that are in college prep programs right now. There's very low numbers in teacher preparation programs across the state and really nationally. And at the same time, we're at that bubble in the baby boom population that are retiring. So retiring right now is way outpacing the number of educators coming out of colleges. And so that's where the, you know, it's not just in the teaching area that this is happening. I think in all business areas, I think you could talk to most any business and there's been a struggle to hire people. So that's, you know, I guess a couple of simple pieces that I would say that we see as we talk about the situation across the state. Every school district that I'm aware of is short something. Maybe it's just a special ed teacher, and they're only short that one position. But there's needs certainly in every, you know, just about every district across the state.
Mr. Barsonas.
Thank you. And along the lines of what Josh was mentioning, what are the trends that you're seeing with one-unit schools? You know, I think, I know that all of us would love to see smaller classrooms, right? But Grand Island is growing. I mean, our community is growing, and that's just one of those things we haven't balanced out. And I realize that even if we were to take, I think right now you're taking 25% of the students at Sealing Mile already transfers, correct? So if we were to take and fill the school, I mean, it isn't a lot of kids. So if we would need to rebuild or be able to have the space, I think Sealing Mile does have maybe space to expand, but that would take more money as we're facing a shortfall. What are the trends on communities that are growing with one-unit schools in the state, or what are you seeing or hearing?
Well, you know, right now, Kearney is in the same discussion process of closing the one-unit school that they have. Scottsbluff out in the Panhandles in that same situation. Those are two that I'm aware of. You know, I know I read an article about the one small school that's in New York City that's been there forever. They're closing, and the reasons are the same. It's an inability to come up with enough staff across the district, and the financial inefficiencies of small schools. You know, and I hate this. I'm a small school guy. I went to a one-unit school and got a good education there, and you know, but at that time, when we had elementary openings, when I first started in the teaching business, we had elementary openings even in very rural Nebraska, we would have 30 to 50 applicants for a single teaching position. And that's not even close to the case now. You know, we don't have the teachers that we need to staff the way we'd like to. You know, we are stretching. You know, we're up against the class size bands in some of our places across the district because, you know, we couldn't hire another 1, 2, 3. You know, our staffing plan that we worked with last spring was all about how can we shift enough teachers around in the elementary schools so that we can get to our class band, the top end of our class band sizes in some of our buildings. And again, that's where the decision to not operate the kindergarten at Seedling Mile came. We had 9 students. We could not justify utilizing a teacher for 9 students. So that's the unfortunate reality of where we're at right now.
Ms. Jurgens.
Families, I just wanted to thank you again for coming out and speaking tonight. Several of you joined us at our last board meeting, and taking the time to come and speak your mind and tell your stories, that's hard. And no, none of the board members here have students in Seedling Mile. And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what you or your child is going through right now. That would not be true or fair. But I sincerely hope you know that so much thought has gone into this. And these considerations have to be made for little under 10,000 students. And yours is no less valuable than any other child that attends our district. So all that is to say, any decision made is not, I hope you understand that it's not short-sighted and that we're not considering your children. They're the reason we're here. Your child and all the others, they're the reason we're here. And then just on a personal note, as a mother, there's nothing more important to me than my kids. There's not even a close second. So I sincerely understand your passion there, and I empathize with you. And I just have so much respect for you for coming in and voicing this. I truly wish more parents would advocate for their kids. This is my last board meeting, and I have a short list of topics that I've had to deal with personally as a board member that will leave scars. This is one. I just hope you know how much you matter. So I just wanted to say thank you personally.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to move to not operate Seedling Mile Elementary for the 25-26 school year and to adjoin the Seedling Mile attendance area with the Dodge attendance area during that time.
Seconded by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
People don't come because that's what happens.
Done deal before we started.
Yeah, that's all made their minds up. 3 people want one district, no money there.
Notification of upcoming board meetings. Regular board meeting will be Thursday, January 9th at 2025 at 5:30 p.m.